right? So now we're looking at section B, which is the module 2 component and 2018 paper. The first question states here now, Mr. Jack, a teacher, suspects that Jane cheated in an exam. Oh my. The principal convenes a committee of inquiry to investigate the matter. The committee comprising the principal, the deputy principal, and Mr. Jack meets and suspends Jane from school for 2 weeks. Jane applies for judicial review of the case as she thinks that the committee acted ultra vires. Okay. First to know, define judicial review. Somebody define it, please. Define judicial review. Go ahead.
The jurisdiction of superior courts to review laws decisions after omission of public authorities.
Okay, lovely. And you could add in that it determines the legality or unconstitutionality, right? Unconstitutionality or the illegality of these decisions made by these public institutions. All right, lovely. What is the doctrine of ultra vires? What does that mean, ultra vires? Go ahead.
Acting
Go ahead.
beyond power.
Okay, all right. But Alia, go ahead. It's because the hand went up, so Alia, go ahead. What is the doctrine of?
Something that is inconsistent with the provisions sorry, something that is inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution.
Okay, so it can be constitutional ultravirus or it can be just statutory ultravirus. So the thing is, you're saying that it's outside the scope of the constitution, but that does not account for all cases of ultravirus. Just speak about it's out of the scope of a set law or something, right? So out of its scope, right? Something occurring outside of a scope not normally set or something like that, right? Acting outside the power, all right? So I see here now in the Shan said in the chat, ultravirus is a doctrine which means exceeding or going beyond one's authority or powers. Lovely. Right? B. With reference to one decided case, explain two principles of improper delegation of power. Notice how I went through all of these. So improper delegation of power. Two cases that deal with improper delegation. Go ahead. I think I only gave one case and I gave Sutherland v. Groves, I believe. But we need one. Oh, it's one case that asked for. Oh, it's Sutherland v. Groves I have. Alright. Sutherland v. Groves is one case that we have. And you guys can provide the other cases, right? And then explain, with reference to that, explain two principles of improper delegation of power. What would be the two principles that we know? Two principles.
Excuse me, sir. Is one ultravirus?
Okay, is one of the principles ultravirus? Well, like the doctrine itself is that one principle? That's what you're asking? I mean, you'd have to explain. It says to explain two principles, so you'd have to explain that.
Pass.
Not the pass. Improper delegation for. Ultravirus is a principle, you know, but you just need to explain it. Alright?
Oh, okay. So that's where the delegation of his powers were completely outside of his power.
Mm-hmm. So ultravirus, right? And we have something here. I'm gonna set the term. What about a term that our teacher used, right? I guess everybody uses delegatus non potest delegare. What does that mean? What does Latin term mean? Delegatus non potest delegare, right? The delegate cannot further delegate. That's what that Latin term means. So ultravirus and delegatus non potest delegare. Right? Those are the two main principles, right? So the first one is ultravirus. We know what ultravirus is. And then delegatus non potest delegare speaks to the fact that the delegate cannot further delegate. Meaning that if you have power to do something, you cannot tell somebody else to do it. It's only you have the power to do it. So then the Groves, what was happening here? We have the road, we have the main road act thing, right? And the governor was given power actually to remove any type of building or structure that was going over the road or that was encroaching on the road, right? But at the end of the day, it was a member of his department that did it and not him. You cannot delegate any further when you have already been delegated the power. Delegatus non potest delegare. That is another principle of improper delegation. Everybody's fine with that?
Yes, sir.
Lovely. With reference to principles of natural justice, as advised Jane on whether or not her suspension was lawful. Use one decided case to support your answer now. Look at what Jane was doing now. What was the main issue here? Let me highlight the main issue, right? Jack suspects her of cheating, right? So they convene a committee, but the committee contains the principal, the deputy principal, and Mr. Jack, the same person who suspects her, and she was suspended. How is this an issue? Use reference to the principles of natural justice to advise Jane here. Okay, first of all, before we go into how we're going to advise Jane, right? Was her suspension lawful or unlawful? And why? Okay.
Unlawful.
Unlawful, and why is it unlawful?
Because bias. There was bias.
Repeat?
Sir, in the rule of natural justice, sir, or one of the principles, sir, is the rule against bias and the right to a fair hearing. So, Jane, sir, because a participant in that committee, sir, would be a part of the committee, there would be potential bias, and Jane didn't get a fair hearing. So, tell why she not get suspended.
Okay, lovely. So as Tasha says in the chat as well, right? Freedom against bias, right? The same thing. He said the right to be heard, the right to be told of why she was suspended and the procedure, right? So looking at that, so she was suspected of cheating, just a suspicion, right? She just suspect. You know, just a completely suspicion, right? So okay, she was suspected of cheating, right? And then a entire committee was being convened. So okay, she was suspected. Okay, that's fine, right? That's completely fine. The committee was created. Okay, that's fine as well. But the committee comprised of the same person who suspected her. So there's gonna be some bias. There's a conflict of interest. So all we need to do now is speak about the principles of natural justice and advise her on whether or not this suspension was unlawful, and then use one decided case. Now, what would be the decided case that we use here?
I would use Booker and Widow, or I would use HK, the infant case, sir, where an immigrant officer never give the person a fair.
Okay. Alright, so you could use that case. So just write the case in the chat. Let's write the case in the chat. Let's get them down, right? So we could use these two cases as well. I mean, no, I wouldn't use. No, no, no. Destroy these cases. That's to be heard specifically, right? Well, it's a part of bias, I guess, so that can be used. Um, those two rules against bias, lovely, right? Okay, seeing them, so you can have them used against bias.
Okay,
Go
Mr.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Case, like when you're explaining, can one case be in terms of the reviewing the decision aspect?
Okay, hold on. Could you repeat? I didn't hear you. You weren't as clear as before. So I want you to
Oh,
repeat
sorry.
again. Go ahead.
So while you're explaining the whole principle of natural justice in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the decision making process, can a case be on the decision making process and not only on like biasness and
Yes,
principles of natural?
because decision making process was flawed because Jack was on the committee. So you could use decision making process, those cases that were there.
Okay, thank you, sir. So there's this case, Council of Civil Service Unions and the Minister of Civil Service,
Mm-hmm.
1985, where Lord Brightman talk about the decision-making process.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you could use that case. Could you just drop it in the chat on the for the decision making
Yes, sir, no
process there?
problem.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Alright. So I want to add it here. Okay. So everything should be fine. Because once we understand the core principles, there's nothing really much to get. You just use a case to explain your core principle. Because the thing is, the fact that they ask you to provide cases actually help you. Because once you use the cases, you'll have a better understanding of the entire principle. So use cases that you know, right? So yet again, don't try to use any cases that everybody else have and you don't understand. Use cases that you understand, right? Everything should be fine. So you don't want to use a case that you don't understand and it don't make any sense. So Matthew, the case is in the chat, so that case for decision making there. V has a dot after it. Let me just fix up this. Okay, so everything here should be fine. And then the obiter dictum come from Lord Bingham or Lord Brighton?
Brightman.
Brightman. Okay, right. Brightman. Okay. The obiter dictum will come from. Okay. So let's look at this now. State two functions of the judiciary. Any two functions? Any two functions we have? This question. Two functions of the judiciary. I'm looking at the chat as well as hearing for anybody raising their hand to go ahead and answer. So, any two functions judiciary? Judiciary. Any?
There to interpret and enforce law.
So law interpretation, law enforcement. Okay. Any other functions? This could be interpretation and application. Do they enforce the law though? Well, technically, yeah. Alright. We also have judicial review. And it's a part of their checks and balances with the separation powers. Anything else do we have? Protection of rights. And that really comes under judicial review, so protect the rights. Of the rights and the constitution. those type of things, right? So we have all sorts of rules, right, for the functions of the judiciary, right? Um, I don't know where I'm gonna put this. Ah boy. Go ahead.
So appointing judges,
Appointing
is that in
judges.
terms of the law enforcement?
Well, not necessarily, but appointing judges would be a job of the president of the court or the chief justice, which is a part of the judiciary. So I guess if you don't have any other point, then you put that point.
Sir, could dispute resolution be one?
Dispute resolution is generally dispute resolution. Yes, litigation, right? Dispute resolution. Yes, that's the function of the judiciary, right? Mm-hmm. That is one. So keeping the legislation and the executive, the legislature and the executive in check via judicial review, that is a function. Safeguard the constitution, interpreting, yes, okay. So all of these things. So now we move to the legislature. What are the functions of legislature? I saw in the chat lawmaking. So it's really legislation. Because lawmaking is just the colloquial or the common man's term for legislation. So legislation, which is lawmaking. We have representation. So they ought to represent the views of the people. Let me check the chat. Anything else? They also provide oversight of the executive. Remember, if the ministers that are supposed to be there in the executive, right, actually anger the parliament, and the people, right, then those ministers most definitely are going to be pressured to resign or to leave. So there's going to be pressure from parliament, right? So parliament is going to be overlooking the executive, the oversight of parliament to the executive or the legislature to the executive, all right? So those are fine. With one reference to decided case, explain two principles of doctrine of separation of powers. Two principles of the doctrine of separation of powers. Let's go. Two principles. One of them will always say. We always say one. It's repeated over and over again. Two principles. We have checks and balances, right? Oh, go ahead. Somebody unmuted. I want them to go ahead. All right. And we have the independence of each branch. So each branch is independent, and there is a system of checks and balances that are holding them together, right? Those are the two principles. And what are the cases that would use for adoption of separation of powers? What are the case laws now? Cases? Heinz VR, lovely. Okay, go ahead, Jada, raise your hand.
I was going to say Ainsworth and the Queen.
Okay, anyone else? Any other case? Starts with a C.
Collymore versus the Attorney General.
The Attorney General, the AG. Lovely. Those are the two main cases that we tend to use. So you use one of them. Use the one that you know better, right? The Parliament of the State of Planteria, right? So because it's funny to me because in Spanish, when you add aria to the end of it, it's a shop, right? Like panaderia, like that's where you buy bread, and because it says planteria, it sounds like a plant shop. Go ahead.
So I was asking if you could go back up a bit.
Oh, okay. Let me go back up a bit. Well, planteria just sounds weird. Like it's a place where you buy plants. All right, but is this up enough, or you want me to go a bit further up? It's fine?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I can go back.
No problem. So the Parliament of the State of Plantaria passes the new Court Act. That's so interesting. What's the Parliament doing passing a Court Act? That's crazy. Section 5 of the Act provides for the appointment of the Speaker of the House of Assembly as a High Court judge during his tenure as a Speaker. The leader of the opposition wishes to challenge the constitutionality of Section 5 of the Act of the in the High Court. Using one decided case to support your answer, advise the leader of the opposition on whether or not he has local standi. Does he have local standi? As the Farrell versus Attorney General, that can also be used in doctrine of separation of powers, yes? But for this last part now, does he have local standi? Before I ask, what is local standi? Oh, thank you.
Sir, the right to like bring an action in court or like to appear in court.
Lovely. Having the standing or the grounds to make a claim in court. Lovely. Right, for litigation. Lovely, Tasha, right? So,
Sir, the right to be heard. Yes, sir.
well, the right to be brought before the court more so than right to be heard. But, yeah. But does the leader of the opposition have local standi in this case, in this matter?
No, sir, I don't believe.
Okay, you said no. Alright, so why don't you believe that he has local standi?
Sir, probably because, if I'm correct, probably the separation of power doctrine would have come in play where he wanted the Speaker of the House to be a High Court judge. I'm guessing.
They want the Speaker of the House to be a High Court judge, right? But you're saying that it doesn't affect the leader of the opposition. Okay. Alright. Tasha says it will affect, right? And she says this because the law made would be unconstitutional because it breaches the separation of powers. So that's the reason why he would have local standi? Huh. The Parliament of the state passes a new court act. Section 5 of the act provides the appointment of the Speaker of the House of Assembly as a High Court judge during the tenure as Speaker. The leader of the opposition wishes to challenge this constitutionality. We're saying that the Speaker of the opposition Speaker does not have local standi. What does this section speak to? So regardless of, remember the Speaker of the House, right? That's where the leader of opposition would be in the House, right, of Assembly, and the Speaker of the House is going to be a High Court judge. So they're saying that, okay, so the thing is, you're supposed to decide, right? So whether or not you believe, right, that this will affect, or that the opposition leader will have local standi, that's where you discuss. But I want you guys to know what local standi is, and in the exam or in situations where you need to discuss it now, since you know what it is now, then you use your own explanations to figure out whether or not he actually has local standi, alright? But
Excuse me, sir, was I correct?
I can't per se tell you whether or not you're correct. We're supposed to decide whether or not he has local standi. So you're saying no, you need to provide a sufficient explanation. If somebody else says yes, they also need to provide a suitable explanation. I can't say yes or no.
Okay, sir.
Right? Can't say yes or no.
What is locus classicus?
Locus classicus? Locus classicus is generally the leading case that sets out a specific law that is used to govern. So it's usually a key precedent. That's what locus classicus is. And we're going to be talking about a bunch of them tomorrow, because I have like several locus classici to talk about. Right? But locus classicus is generally like the chief precedent that all other precedents so far comes down from. Alright? But section 5 of the constitution, not the constitution, of the act, is that unconstitutional? And how so? Could somebody tell me whether or not Section 5 is unconstitutional and tell me how? How so? Anyone? Alright, yes, I think it was. Okay, so Matthew says Matthew, was this speaking to local standard? Or is this your answer for the unconstitutionality?
I think both of them, I guess.
Both of them? Okay. So the breach of separation for Parliament acted outside. Okay, so that's for the case using that case. Okay. But we're saying that this is unconstitutional. The act is unconstitutional because it breaches the doctrine of separation of powers. Because it allows a high court judge to be present within the legislature. The judicature and the legislature are merging at this point, right? And it is against, right? So its constitutionality is out, right? And it's unconstitutional because of ultra vires. Because we have the position, we have a high court judge, right? The judicature acting in the legislature, and if he's going to be the Speaker of the House, we're going to have the member of the legislature acting in the judicature, right? So we're having these issues with overlapping the different sections of government or branches of government. It is ultra vires, it is unconstitutional, right? So we'll look at that. So it's substantive ultra vires for the most part, alright? So that should be fine there. So you guys should be able to explain that with a case, right? So Heinz VR was a case that was brought up earlier that could be used here as well. We could use Colin Moore versus the Attorney General as well. But I think Heinz VR may be more suitable. Yeah, Heinz VR is much more suitable than Colin Moore. Go ahead.
Just a question.
Mm-hmm.
If, so for instance, you have a question and it doesn't ask for a case, you can still use one?
Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where the case, right, itself, right, if it doesn't ask, yeah, you can use a decided case, right? But what this is telling you is that in order to get full marks, you must use a decided case. That's what it's telling you. Because the thing is, no, right, when I was doing law specifically, right, there were 3 people doing it, right? Me and one of my closest friends, right? She never really used cases that much. What her strength was legislation. If you say something, she knows the legislation, the section everywhere, every law, every statute. She knew the statutes, right? But she never really know cases that much, right? Me now, do I know all the statutes? No, but I know cases, right? So there are differences. So in cases where they'll ask her now to use a case, right, it would a bit shaky for her because she never really use a lot of cases. She use statute. But if they don't ask for cases, then you can use your statute, you can use examples, you can use case study, you can use cases, right? So that should be fine. So that is the end of this section there.